At 3:07 the morning, the 7th floor of Saint Aurelia Hospital should have been silent. Not peaceful. Hospitals were never peaceful. There was always the soft pulse of monitors, the distant hum of ventilation, the rubber whisper of a nurse's shoes against polished tile, the occasional groan of someone fighting pain behind a closed door. But silence? Real silence? That only came before something terrible happened. Outside the tall private room windows, Chicago drowned beneath a violent spring storm. Rain lashed against the glass in silver streaks. Ambulance lights bled red across the wet street below. Thunder rolled over the city like a warning too late to matter. Inside room 714, Matteo Bellandi opened his eyes. He had been unconscious for 6 hours. At least, that was what the doctors believed. A bullet had torn through the flesh beneath his ribs. Another had cut deep into his shoulder. His left side was wrapped in white bandages, already turning pink beneath the hospital gown. An IV ran into his arm. Electrodes clung to his chest. A heart monitor beat beside him with slow, controlled rhythm. To the police, he was a criminal. To the FBI, he was a problem they had failed to solve. To the men who worked under him, he was the last name whispered before violence became inevitable. Matteo Bellandi, the man they called the Black Dawn of Chicago. And at 3:07 a.m., he woke not because of pain, not because of thunder, not because of the machines. He woke because someone was crying. At first, the sound was so small it almost disappeared beneath the rain. A breath catching, a broken inhale, the kind of sound a woman makes when she has pressed both hands over her mouth because she has already decided no one is allowed to hear her fall apart. Matteo did not move. His eyes shifted toward the half-open door. The corridor outside his room was washed in cold blue emergency light. The private security chair beside his door was empty. That was the first thing wrong. The second was the radio lying on the floor. Its red signal light blinked silently. His guard was gone. Matteo's heartbeat did not change. Only his eyes did. They sharpened. Then the sound came again. Closer this time. A woman's voice, trembling inside the medication room down the hall. "No, please. I told you already. I don't know where he is." Matteo turned his head fully toward the door. A man answered her. Low. Calm. Too calm for a hospital at 3 in the morning. "You were the last person your brother called before he vanished, Ava." A pause. Then the woman whispered, "Don't say his name." Matteo slowly pushed himself up. Pain ripped through him so violently that the room blurred white for half a second. His hand clamped over the wound beneath his ribs. Warm blood slipped under his palm. The monitor beside him began to beep faster. He ignored it. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, ripped the IV needle from his arm, and stood. The machine screamed. Matteo Bellandi did not. He walked to the door barefoot, bleeding, still wearing a hospital gown that would have made any other man look weak. But men like Matteo did not become less dangerous when wounded. They became harder to predict. He stepped into the corridor. The 7th floor stretched long and empty in both directions. This wing was reserved for people with money, enemies, secrets, or all three. The doors were reinforced. The elevators required coded access. The nurses were trained not to ask questions when armed men stood outside patient rooms. But tonight there were no armed men. No nurses at the desk. No footsteps. No voices. Only rain. Only alarms waiting to begin. Matteo moved toward the medication room. With every step, blood warmed the bandage under his gown. His body begged him to stop. His mind recorded details. One overturned coffee cup near the nurse's station. One security camera angled toward the ceiling. One smear of blood near the elevator. Not his. Inside the medication room, the woman's voice cracked. "My brother is 19. He doesn't know anything." The man laughed softly. "That's the problem, sweetheart. He knew enough to run." Matteo stopped outside the door. Through the small rectangular window, he saw her. Ava Monroe. Night shift nurse, 27. Dark hair pulled into a loose clip. Navy scrubs wrinkled from a shift that had clearly lasted too long. A thin silver locket at her throat. Eyes red from crying, but shoulders squared as if she had spent her entire life refusing to let fear see her knees buckle. A man in a gray suit stood too close to her. He had one hand around her wrist, not hard enough to leave proof, hard enough to remind her who had control. Matteo looked at that hand. Then he opened the door. The man turned first. Ava turned second. For one frozen moment, The only sound in the room was the high, distant shriek of Matteo's abandoned heart monitor down the hall. Ava's eyes widened. "Mr. Bellandi." Matteo did not look at her. His gaze remained on the man gripping her wrist. "Let go of her." The stranger released her slowly, smiling as if Matteo's arrival was inconvenient, but not unexpected. "You should be unconscious," he said. Matteo stepped inside. Blood slid down his side. "You should not be touching my nurse." Ava's breath caught at the word "my." The stranger's smile sharpened. "Your nurse?" Matteo took another step closer. "She was assigned to keep me alive. That makes whatever happens to her my concern." The man glanced at the spreading blood beneath Matteo's gown. "You can barely stand. Then imagine how embarrassing it will be when I break your wrist from this position." Ava whispered, "Please don't make this worse." The stranger looked at her. "Too late for that, Ava." Matteo's eyes flicked to her. Ava's face went pale. The man continued, enjoying every word. "Your brother should have handed over what he stole. Now everyone is awake because of him." Matteo's voice lowered. "What did he steal?" The stranger smiled. "Something buried under this hospital." Ava looked like the floor had dropped beneath her. Matteo saw the reaction. She knew something, or feared she did. The man slipped one hand toward the inside of his jacket. Matteo moved before the fabric shifted. He caught the man's wrist, slammed it against the medicine cabinet, and drove his elbow into his throat. The stranger choked. A small black device dropped from his hand and skidded across the floor. Ava gasped. Matteo twisted the man's wrist until his knees hit the tile. "Who sent you?" Matteo asked. The man coughed, blood touching his lip. Ava grabbed gauze from the counter automatically, her nurse instincts overriding terror. "You're bleeding through your bandage." Matteo did not turn. "Who sent you?" The man looked up, smiling through pain. "By sunrise," he rasped, "someone on this floor disappears." The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then every door lock on the 7th floor clicked at the same time. Ava froze. Matteo heard metal shutters drop over the elevator bay. A second later, the hospital intercom crackled overhead. "Code Silver, 7th floor lockdown. Code Silver, 7th floor lockdown." Ava's face drained of color. "Active threat," she whispered. The man on the floor laughed. From somewhere down the hall came the sound of boots. Not hospital staff. Not police. Coordinated. Heavy. Coming closer. Matteo looked at Ava Monroe, the crying nurse with bloodshot eyes and a missing brother. Then he looked at the empty hallway where his guard should have been. Then at the man kneeling on the floor. The stranger smiled up at him. "You hear that, Bellandi?" Matteo did. Footsteps from the east corridor. More from the west. The 7th floor had been sealed. His men were outside. The police could not be trusted. Ava's brother was missing, and someone inside Saint Aurelia Hospital had just started a countdown to sunrise. Matteo picked up the stranger's fallen device, crushed it under his bare heel, and leaned down until his voice was soft enough to be terrifying. "You made one mistake." The stranger swallowed. Matteo glanced at Ava. "You made her cry where I could hear it." Ava stared at him, breath shaking. Outside the medication room, the first masked man appeared at the end of the hall, rifle raised. Matteo grabbed the stranger by the collar with one hand and shoved Ava behind him with the other. "Stay close," he said. Ava looked at the blood pouring from his side. "You can barely walk." Matteo's eyes stayed on the approaching gunmen. "Then pray I don't have to run." The first bullet shattered the medication room window. Ava ducked as glass exploded over the stainless steel counter. Matteo pulled her behind him and fired the gun he had taken from the stranger's waistband. The shot cracked through the room, deafening in the small space. The masked man in the hallway dropped behind a medication cart. Ava's hands shook, but her mind snapped into emergency mode. "Back door," she said. "What?" "Supply corridor. Behind the narcotics cabinet. It connects to radiology." Matteo shoved the stranger forward. "Open it." The man laughed. "You think you can drag me with you?" Matteo pressed the gun to the side of his neck. "I think you can become useful or dead. Choose quickly." The stranger stopped laughing. Ava yanked a key ring from the wall and unlocked the supply door. It opened into a narrow corridor stacked with boxes, IV bags, and cleaning equipment. The lights inside were dim. The air smelled of plastic and disinfectant. Another bullet ripped through the medication room door. Ava flinched. Matteo pushed her into the corridor first, then shoved the stranger after her. He followed last, firing twice through the door to keep the attackers back. They ran. Or rather, Ava ran. The stranger stumbled. Matteo moved with the terrifying determination of a man refusing to acknowledge that his body was failing. Blood dripped behind him on the tile. Ava saw it when she looked back. Matteo, do not stop. You're losing too much blood. So are my enemies. That is not medical reassurance. He almost smiled. The corridor opened near the old radiology wing, a section of the hospital closed for renovation. Plastic sheets hung from the ceiling. Tools lay abandoned on the floor. The emergency lights painted everything red. Ava pulled Matteo into an alcove behind an old X-ray machine. Sit. No. Sit down or bleed out standing. I have survived worse. Good. Then you can survive 30 seconds of obeying me. For 1 second, Matteo looked genuinely startled. Then Ava pressed both hands to his wound. His jaw tightened. She tore open gauze with her teeth, packed it against the reopened stitches, and wrapped tape around his side with fast, precise hands. The stranger watched from the floor, breathing hard. You two make a touching couple. Matteo pointed the gun at him without looking. Speak again, and you lose the ability. Ava's hands paused at the word couple, but she forced herself to focus. You need surgery, she said. I needed surgery before I left the bed. Then why did you leave? He looked at her. His voice changed. I heard you crying. Ava's finger still. For one heartbeat, the lockdown, the gunman, the blood, the missing brother, everything faded under the weight of that sentence. No one had come when she cried before. Not when her mother died. Not when Eli got suspended from school because he punched a boy who mocked their dead mother. Not when she worked double shifts until she fell asleep on buses. Not when she stood in hospital bathrooms with cold water running so nobody would hear her break. But Matteo Bellandi had heard. And he had come. Ava looked away first. You should have stayed in bed. Probably. Why didn't you? His eyes did not leave her face. Because your voice sounded like someone had taken everything from you. She swallowed hard. Before she could answer, the stranger on the floor said, They have. Ava turned slowly. Matteo lifted the gun again. His name, Matteo said. The stranger leaned his head back against the wall. Damon Vale. Matteo's expression sharpened. You know him? Ava asked. Matteo's jaw tightened. He used to work for a man who betrayed my family. Damon smiled. I worked for a man your family murdered. He betrayed us. He discovered what your father built under this hospital. Ava's stomach went cold. My brother said something about that, she whispered. Matteo looked at her. Ava reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. The screen was cracked. 11 missed calls from Eli. 1 voicemail. I didn't listen until my break, she said. By then his phone was off. Matteo's eyes darkened. Play it. Ava hesitated. Then she pressed the voicemail. Eli's voice filled the abandoned radiology wing. Ava, don't call the police. I mean it. Don't trust them. I found something under Saint Aurelia. I wasn't supposed to see it. There are rooms down there. Names. Patients who never left. Mom's name is... The voicemail crackled. Then Eli's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. Someone's coming. Ava, if I disappear, check your locket, Mom always said. The message cut off. Ava's fingers closed around the silver locket at her throat. Matteo stared at it. Damon did too. And that was when Ava understood. Whatever Eli had found, he had hidden part of it with her. Her brother had known he might not survive the night. He had put the truth around her neck. Damon's smile faded. You really didn't know. Ava stepped back. What is in this? Damon said nothing. Matteo moved so fast Ava barely saw it. He grabbed Damon by the collar and slammed him against the wall. What is in her locket? Damon coughed. A drive. What drive? The ledger. Matteo's grip tightened. Damon's voice rasped. Transfers, payments, patient names, fake deaths, judges, senators, police, doctors, your father's signature, your brother's recordings. Harlan's updates. Everyone who ever paid Saint Aurelia to erase a person. Ava felt the air leave her lungs. Erase a person. Her brother was missing. Her mother's name was in the voicemail. The locket suddenly felt heavy enough to drag her to the floor. Matteo looked at Ava. For the first time there was something like apology in his eyes. My father, he said quietly, built many things I have spent years burning. Did you know about this? No. Ava wanted to believe him. That scared her. Because believing Matteo Bellandi meant accepting that the only person standing between her and the men who took her brother was a wounded Mafia boss whose family might have started the nightmare. A distant crash echoed through the wing. The attackers had found the supply corridor. Damon looked toward the sound. They will sweep this floor room by room. Harlan wants the locket, he wants Eli. And if he cannot get both— His eyes moved to Ava. Matteo finished for him. He takes her. Ava's phone vibrated. Everyone froze. Unknown number. Ava answered before fear could stop her. Ava. Her knees nearly gave out. Eli? Matteo stepped closer, listening. Eli's voice was weak, breathless. I don't have much time. Where are you? Tell me where you are. I'm under the hospital. Ava closed her eyes. Matteo's face hardened. Eli continued, There's an old chapel. They kept me here. I hid what I could. I put the key in Mom's locket when I hugged you yesterday. Ava touched the silver oval against her chest. Eli, listen to me. I'm coming. No, don't. They want you. I don't care. You should. They said if Bellandi wakes up, everything changes. Matteo took the phone gently from her hand. This is Bellandi. A long silence. Then Eli whispered, You're alive. For now. I saw them shoot you in the parking garage. The ambulance was fake. Dr. Harlan opened the gate. Ava's eyes widened. Dr. Malcolm Harlan was the chief surgeon of Saint Aurelia. He was the man who had told her Eli was probably mixed up with bad people. The man who had touched her shoulder and said, Sometimes young men run from their responsibilities. Matteo's voice turned cold. Harlan is inside this. He runs it, Eli said. But he's not alone. They have cops, judges, hospital board members. I saw names. A noise came through the phone. A door opening. Eli's breathing changed. Ava, he whispered quickly. Mom didn't die the way they said. Ava went still. What? She found the first ledger years ago. They killed her. The world stopped. Ava did not hear the rain anymore. Did not hear the alarms. Did not hear Damon breathing on the floor. Only one sentence remained. They killed her. Her mother, Ava Monroe, had died 8 years ago in Saint Aurelia Hospital after what doctors called a sudden cardiac arrest. Ava had been 20. Eli had been 11. Ava had blamed exhaustion, poverty, bad luck, a slow emergency response, herself sometimes for not fighting harder. But murder? Eli choked back a sob. I'm sorry, I didn't want to tell you like this. Ava's voice came out broken. Where are you? Old chapel. Under the east wing. There's a service shaft near pediatrics. Anton knows the way. Anton? Maintenance Anton. He tried to help me. A man's voice shouted in the background. Eli whispered, They're coming. Eli. If sunrise comes and I'm gone, don't trade the locket for me. Eli. No. Promise me. I'm not promising that. Ava. Another voice took the phone. Smooth. Cultured. Familiar. Nurse Monroe. Ava stopped breathing. Dr. Harlan. You have something that belongs to this hospital, he said. Ava's hand closed around the locket. You have my brother. Yes. A regrettable situation caused by his poor judgment. If you hurt him, you are in no position to threaten anyone. Matteo reached for the phone, but Ava pulled it back. Her fear had not vanished. It had transformed. You killed my mother. A pause. Then Harlan sighed. Your mother made a tragic choice. She saw paperwork she was never meant to see and mistook curiosity for courage. Do not repeat her mistake. Ava's throat burned. Let Eli go. Bring the locket to the old chapel before sunrise. Alone. Matteo's eyes narrowed. Harlan continued. If Matteo Bellandi comes with you, your brother dies. If the police come, your brother dies. If you damage what is inside the locket, your brother dies. Do you understand? Ava looked at Matteo. Blood on his gown. Gun in his hand. Death in his eyes. Then she looked at Damon, who was watching her like a man waiting to see what kind of person grief would make her. I understand, Ava said. Harlan's voice softened. I doubt that. But you will. The call ended. For 3 seconds no one moved. Then Ava turned and started down the corridor. Matteo caught her wrist. Where are you going? To get my brother. It is a trap. Yes. You cannot walk into it alone. He said if you come, Eli dies. He said that because he is afraid of what happens if I do. Ava pulled against his grip. This is not about your pride. No, Matteo said. It is about strategy. My brother is 19. I know. No, you don't. Her voice cracked. You don't know what it is like to raise someone because the person who should have helped you is gone. You don't know what it is like to count grocery money in a hospital cafeteria. You don't know what it is like to sit through parent-teacher meetings pretending you're not barely older than the students. You don't know what it is like to be the only person a kid has left. Matteo's grip loosened. Ava's eyes filled again, but this time the tears did not weaken her. They sharpened her. Eli is not a file. He is not leverage. He is not collateral. He is my brother. He is the reason I kept going when I didn't want to. And if I have to walk into hell to bring him back, then move out of my way. Matteo said nothing. The red emergency light flashed across his face. For a moment, Ava thought he would force her to stay. Instead, he released her wrist. Then he handed her the gun. She stared at it. I don't know how to use this. Point the dangerous end away from yourself. Pull only when you mean it. That is your training? It has worked for generations. Despite everything, a breath of laughter escaped her. Matteo took it in like a man hearing music after years underground. Then his face hardened. But you are not going alone. Ava shook her head. Harlan said Matteo Bellandi cannot come with you. He looked down at his blood-soaked hospital gown. Fortunately, I look terrible enough to be mistaken for a corpse. Damon groaned from the floor. That is not a plan. Matteo looked at him. You are part of it. Damon's expression changed. No. Yes. I betrayed Harlan once already. Then make it a habit. I do not know the route. Ava said. Eli said Anton does. Matteo pulled Damon upright. Then we find Anton. They moved through the abandoned wing toward the old pediatric section. At 3:46 a.m., Saint Aurelia became a maze of shadows. The hospital above them shook with controlled chaos. Staff trapped behind locked fire doors, patients calling for help, sirens outside, security announcements repeating in loops. Somewhere, police were probably surrounding the building, unaware that the real crime scene was beneath their feet. Ava led because she knew the hospital better than anyone. She knew which supply closets connected to staff-only halls. She knew which badge readers failed during power transfers. She knew where renovation crews left ladders and which doors stuck unless kicked near the bottom hinge. Matteo followed close behind, slower now. Too slow. Ava noticed even when he tried to hide it. His breathing had changed. His face was pale under the red lights. Blood dripped steadily from his side. She stopped near a janitor's room. He glared. Do not. You need pressure. I need time. You won't have any if you collapse. Damon looked back down the hall. If you two want to flirt over internal bleeding, I can wait elsewhere. Matteo pressed the gun under his chin. Damon raised both hands. Ava pulled Matteo into the janitor's room and shut the door behind them. It was cramped. Buckets, mops, bleach bottles, old towels. She grabbed clean rags from a shelf and pressed them hard to Matteo's side. He hissed through his teeth. Good, she said. Pain means you're alive. I have never had a nurse weaponize optimism before. You have never had me. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Matteo's eyes lifted to hers. The room felt suddenly smaller. Ava looked down, embarrassed. I mean medically. Of course. There was almost a smile in his voice. She taped the rags down with medical tape from her pocket. Her hands brushed his skin. He was warm, too warm. Fever could come later. Shock could come sooner. You are going to die if you keep pushing, she whispered. He watched her face. Are you asking me to stop? No. Then do not say impossible things. Ava looked at him then. Really looked. Not at the crime lord. Not at the patient. Not at the man whose name frightened police officers. At the exhausted, bleeding human being choosing to follow her into a nightmare because he had heard her cry. Why are you helping me? She asked. Matteo's answer was quiet. Because when I was a boy, I heard my mother crying once. My father told me powerful men do not answer tears. Ava stopped moving. Matteo looked toward the door, his jaw tense. I spent most of my life proving I was powerful. And tonight? His eyes came back to hers. Tonight I am answering. Ava forgot how to breathe. Then something slammed into the door. Damon cursed outside. Company. Matteo moved first. He yanked Ava behind a shelf as bullets punched through the door. Cleaning bottles burst. Bleach sprayed over the floor. Damon threw himself inside as the door splintered. 2 masked men entered after him. Matteo shot the first one through the chest. Ava, shaking, raised her gun at the second. The man swung toward her. For half a second, she saw everything. His black mask. His rifle. His finger tightening. Her brother tied somewhere below. Her mother murdered in this building. Matteo bleeding because he had stood in front of her. Ava pulled the trigger. The shot hit the man's shoulder. He spun back, screaming. Matteo finished him with one clean shot. The silence afterward rang louder than the bullets. Ava stared at the gun in her hand. Her breath came fast. I shot someone. Matteo stepped in front of her, blocking her view of the bodies. You stopped someone from shooting you. That doesn't make it feel better. No. What does? Time. Sometimes. She looked at him. Does it work for you? He did not lie. No. That honesty almost broke her. Damon pulled a keycard from one of the fallen men. If we are done processing emotions, this gets us to facilities. They moved again. At 4:02 a.m., they found Anton Greaves in the boiler control room. He was sitting in a chair beneath flickering lights, a pistol on the table in front of him, and a photograph clutched in his hand. Anton was 63, with gray hair, tired eyes, and hands that had fixed nearly every broken thing in Saint Aurelia for 22 years. Ava had known him since her first week. He brought candy to nurses. He repaired the broken heater in the staff lounge without filing a request. He had once driven Ava home after she fell asleep standing beside a vending machine. Now he looked at her like a man already condemned. Ava, he whispered. Her voice trembled. Tell me you didn't help them take Eli. Anton closed his eyes. Ava's face crumpled. No. They have my grandson, Anton said. He's 11. Harlan took him after Eli ran. Said if I didn't help seal the floor, they'd send the boy downstairs. Matteo stepped forward. Where is the old chapel? Anton looked at him, then at the blood on his gown. Your father built the new access tunnels after the chapel was sealed. My father is dead, but his door's still open. Matteo's voice lowered. Then open them. Anton looked at Ava. I'm sorry, he said. She shook her head. Sorry is later. My brother is now. Anton nodded, tears in his eyes. He turned to the control panel and typed a code. A wall cabinet clicked open, revealing an old elevator panel hidden behind cleaning supplies. The service elevator doesn't appear on hospital maps, he said. It goes to sublevel 3. From there, follow the blue line. That leads to the old chapel, Damon muttered. Blue line to hell. Convenient. Anton continued. Harlan's men are below. Maybe 6. Maybe more. The underground ward is active. Ava felt sick. Ward? Anton's face collapsed into grief. People who were supposed to vanish. Matteo went still. Anton looked at him. Your brother found it years ago. That is why he died. Something cold passed through Matteo's expression. My brother betrayed my family. No, Anton said. He betrayed your father. The words struck harder than any bullet. Matteo said nothing. Anton pulled a folder from under the console and handed it to Ava. Your mother worked billing. She found false patient transfers. She copied files. She was going to expose them. Ava stared at the folder. Ava Monroe, her mother's name. Her knees nearly gave out. Eli's voicemail had been true. Anton's voice broke. Harlan ordered the termination. They staged cardiac arrest. I found the file later. I should have told you. Ava could not speak. Everything inside her went silent. The years of grief. The anger. The guilt. The image of her mother's still hand in a hospital bed. All of it changed shape. Murder. Matteo watched Ava's face and felt something inside him go dark enough to frighten even himself. He turned to Anton. Where is Harlan? Chapeau. With Eli? Yes. And your grandson? Anton nodded. Matteo picked up the pistol from the table and placed it in Anton's hand. You are coming. Anton looked terrified. Matteo leaned closer. You helped them open doors. Now you help us close a grave around them. The hidden elevator groaned as it carried them down. No one spoke. Ava stood between Eli's file and her mother's folder, one hand gripping the locket, the other holding the gun Matteo had given her. Matteo stood beside her, one hand against the wall, hiding how badly he needed support. Damon leaned in the corner, nervous for the first time. Anton stared at the floor. The elevator descended past levels the hospital admitted existed. Sublevel 1. Sublevel 2. Then the numbers disappeared. The lights flickered. The air grew colder. When the doors opened, they were no longer in Saint Aurelia Hospital. They were beneath it. The corridor ahead was built of old brick and reinforced steel. Emergency strips glowed along the floor. Blue paint marked a path down the center like a vein leading deeper into the body of the city. Behind glass doors, Ava saw rooms. Not storage rooms. Patient rooms. Some were empty. Some were not. An elderly man lay sedated in one bed. A woman with silver hair pressed her palm against the glass as they passed. A young man in hospital scrubs sat on the floor, rocking silently. Ava stopped. Matteo caught her arm gently. We cannot save them if we die before reaching Harlan. We can't leave them. We won't. How can you promise that? He looked at the trapped people, then back at her. Because I am very good at destroying things. For once, she hoped that was true. They followed the blue line. The deeper they walked, the more the hidden hospital revealed itself. Old records rooms, transfer bays, surgical suites without windows, locked archives, a room full of personal belongings stored in plastic bags, watches, shoes, wedding rings, photographs, lives reduced to evidence no one had meant to return. Ava stopped at a shelf of labeled boxes. Ava Monroe. Her fingers reached for the box. Matteo stopped her softly. After Eli. She hated that he was right. They kept moving. At the end of the corridor stood two tall wooden doors reinforced with modern steel. Behind them, Ava heard her brother's voice. Weak, angry, alive. Harlan, you touch her and I swear. A slap cracked through the air. Ava surged forward. Matteo caught her around the waist and pulled her back. Think, he whispered. I heard him. So did they. The chapel doors opened from the inside. Dr. Malcolm Harlan stood beneath a stone archway, wearing a surgical coat over a tailored gray suit. His silver hair was immaculate. His face was calm. Behind him, floodlights illuminated an underground chapel that looked like it had been buried with its sins. Rows of broken pews lined the walls. Medical equipment stood near the altar. Cables snaked across the floor. And at the center, tied to a chair beneath a cracked crucifix, was Ava Monroe. His face was bruised. His lips split. But his eyes found Ava immediately. Ava no. Beside the altar, Anton's grandson knelt with tape over his mouth, crying silently. Ava's heart twisted. Harlan smiled. You brought company. Matteo stepped into view. Harlan's smile thinned. Mr. Bellandi, you truly are difficult to kill. Matteo said, Many have complained. I requested Ava come alone, and I decided your request bored me. Harlan's eyes flicked to Damon. And you. I should have known betrayal would become contagious. Damon lifted his bound wrists. I'm having a complicated night. Harlan ignored him and looked at Ava. The locket, Nurse Monroe. Ava touched it. Eli shook his head frantically. Don't give it to him. Harlan struck him again. Ava screamed. Matteo raised his gun. Every armed man in the chapel raised theirs. 6 men. Maybe more in the shadows. Harlan lifted one hand. Let us not make emotional decisions. Ava's voice shook with rage. You killed my mother. Harlan sighed as if disappointed. Your mother was an unfortunate woman with too much curiosity and too little influence. Ava stepped forward. Matteo moved with her, shoulder brushing hers. Harlan noticed. His eyes brightened with interest. Oh, he said softly, that is new. Ava hated the way he looked at them. Like human feeling was a weakness to be catalogued. Harlan continued. Ava Monroe discovered an early version of our program. She could have taken money. She could have walked away. Instead, she threatened to bring files to the press. So you murdered her. I contained a breach. Ava's grip tightened around the gun. Harlan smiled. You see, that emotion? That is why people like you should never hold dangerous information. Matteo's voice cut through the chapel. People like you always mistake pain for weakness. Harlan looked at him. And people like you always mistake violence for authority. Matteo smiled faintly. No, I know exactly what violence is. It is a tool. Authority is making men fear what happens before I use it. The chapel went quiet. Ava felt the air change. Harlan's men shifted uneasily. Even wounded, barefoot, pale, and bleeding, Matteo Bellandi filled the space like a storm entering a church. Harlan's mask slipped for half a second. Then he lifted a small remote. Enough, the locket. Ava looked at Eli. Her brother's face was bruised, terrified, and still stubborn. Just like when he was 11 and insisted he could walk to school alone. Just like when he was 15 and sold his sneakers to buy her a birthday cake. Just like yesterday, when he hugged her too tightly and hid a secret around her neck because he knew she would fight when no one else could. Ava unclasped the locket. Matteo's eyes moved to her hand, but he did not stop her. She held it up. Harlan smiled. Good. Ava stepped toward him. Release Eli first. Harlan chuckled. No. Then I break it. You would not dare. Ava looked at the old baptismal basin near the altar. A drainage grate sat beside it, rusted and open. She moved the locket over the grate. Every gun in the chapel shifted toward her. Harlan's smile vanished. Ava's voice was soft. My whole life, men like you have expected me to be reasonable because I had something to lose. Her eyes filled with tears. But you took my mother. You took my brother. You took patients and names and lives and buried them under a hospital. She looked at Matteo. Then back at Harlan. I am done being reasonable. She dropped the locket. Harlan lung it. Matteo moved at the same instant. The locket hit the stone edge of the grate, cracked open, and the tiny black drive inside bounced onto the floor. Gunfire erupted. Matteo slammed into Ava, taking her down behind the basin as bullets shattered stone above them. Damon threw himself at the nearest guard. Anton fired wildly toward the floodlights. One exploded, plunging half the chapel into darkness. Eli kicked his chair backward and hit the floor. Ava crawled toward him, bullets screaming overhead. Matteo fired from behind the basin, precise and deadly despite the blood slicking his hand. One guard fell. Another staggered into the pews. Ava, Eli shouted. I'm coming. She grabbed the tiny black drive from the floor and shoved it into the front pocket of her scrubs, then crawled to Eli. Her trauma shears shook in her hand as she cut through his bindings. Hold still. I'm trying. You never listen. You're yelling while people shoot at us. I'm multitasking. The rope snapped. Eli threw his arms around her so hard she almost fell. For 1 second, Ava let herself hold him. Then Matteo shouted, down. She pulled Eli to the floor as bullets tore through the chair where he had been tied. Across the chapel, Harlan had grabbed Anton's grandson and was dragging him toward a side door. Anton screamed and ran after him. Damon, bleeding from his forehead, tackled one guard into a pew. Matteo stood to get a clear shot. Too long. A gunman fired from the shadows. The bullet hit Matteo's shoulder. He staggered. Ava saw it. Something inside her snapped. She lifted her gun with both hands and fired at the shadow. The gunman fell back, wounded. Matteo dropped to one knee. Ava ran to him. No, no, no. I am fine, he rasped. You are absolutely not fine. Harlan. She turned. Harlan was almost at the side door with Anton's grandson. Ava looked at the drive in her pocket. The thing everyone wanted. The thing her mother died for. The thing Eli risked everything to protect. She pulled it out. Harlan. He turned. She held the drive between two fingers. Then she put it in her mouth. Harlan's eyes widened in horror. No. Ava swallowed. The chapel went still. Even Matteo stared at her. Ava coughed once, eyes watering. It's waterproof, right? She rasped. Damon from the floor gave a weak laugh. I underestimated nurses. Harlan lost control. He shoved the boy aside, raised his gun, and fired at Ava. Matteo moved. Not fast enough to avoid pain. Fast enough to choose it. He stepped in front of her. The bullet struck his chest below the collarbone. Matteo fell. Ava caught him before his head hit stone. No. The chapel blurred. Blood spread beneath her hands. Matteo's eyes stayed open, but they were unfocused now. Do not, Ava whispered, pressing down on the wound. Do not you dare die after dragging me into your dramatic Mafia redemption story. His mouth moved faintly. What? She bent closer. He whispered, You swallowed evidence. She laughed and sobbed at once. You're focusing on the wrong thing. Behind them, Eli hit Harlan from the side with the full force of 19 years of rage and terror. Harlan stumbled. Anton grabbed his grandson and shoved the boy toward Damon. Harlan raised his gun again. Damon kicked a fallen pistol across the floor. Anton caught it. For 8 years, Anton Greaves had lived with guilt. For hours he had lived with fear. Now, with his grandson behind him and Harlan standing before him, the old maintenance man stopped shaking. He fired. The bullet struck Harlan in the leg. Harlan collapsed, screaming. Eli kicked the gun away from him. Anton stood over the doctor who had taken his daughter, Ava's mother, Eli's childhood, and hundreds of unnamed lives. His finger tightened on the trigger. Ava saw him. Anton, she said. Her voice was soft but firm. Don't give him death. Give him witnesses. Anton trembled. Then he lowered the gun. By 4:39 a.m., the old chapel was theirs. But Matteo was dying. Ava pressed her hands against his wound, while Eli held pressure on the shoulder injury. Damon, pale and bleeding, dragged Harlan's unconscious body away from the gun. Anton untied his grandson and held him like a man afraid the world might take the boy if he loosened his arms. Matteo's breathing grew shallow. Ava leaned over him. "Stay with me." His eyes moved to her face. "You are very demanding. I am your nurse." "My nurse," he whispered. The words hit differently now. Not possession. Recognition. Ava swallowed hard. "Yes, and I am ordering you not to die." He looked almost amused. Then his eyes rolled back. "No, Matteo." She began compressing the wound harder. "Eli, hold this. Damon, find me anything clean. Anton, there has to be emergency oxygen down here." Everyone moved. For the next 10 minutes, Ava Monroe became the entire line between Matteo Bellandi and death. She packed the wound. She sealed the bleeding. She checked his pulse again and again. She forced air into his lungs when his breathing faltered. She talked to him even when his eyes were closed. "You hear me? You do not get to disappear by sunrise. That was not the deal. You came when I was crying. Now you stay while I'm yelling." Eli, shaking, pressed gauze to Matteo's shoulder. "He saved me," Eli whispered. Ava looked at him. Eli's eyes filled. "He stood in front of you. I know. You hate men like him. I know, but he's not like Harlan." Ava looked down at Matteo's pale face. "No," she said quietly, "he is not." At 4:51 a.m., the sound of gunfire echoed from the tunnel. Ava grabbed the pistol. Damon lifted both hands. "If that is Harlan's backup, I suggest pretending I am already dead." Then a voice thundered through the underground corridor. "Boss." Matteo's men arrived like a black storm. Lorenzo Bellandi, Matteo's cousin and right hand, burst into the chapel with 12 armed men behind him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black, with the kind of face that looked built for bad news. He stopped when he saw Matteo on the floor. For 1 second, pure panic crossed his face. Then Ava snapped, "If you want him alive, stop standing there and help me." Lorenzo blinked. No one spoke to him like that. Apparently, nurses did. "What do you need?" he asked. "Portable stretcher, blood, oxygen." A surgical team ready upstairs, and every locked room in that underground ward opened right now. Lorenzo looked toward Matteo. Matteo was unconscious. Lorenzo looked back at Ava. "You are the person keeping him alive." Lorenzo turned to his men. "You heard her." Within minutes, the underground chapel became a battlefield hospital. Matteo was lifted onto a stretcher. Ava refused to let anyone move him until she secured the pressure dressings herself. Eli stayed close. Lorenzo's men disarmed Harlan's guards, freed Anton's grandson, and dragged Damon to his feet. Damon winced. "I am technically on your side now." Lorenzo looked at him. "Unfortunate for you." Ava grabbed Lorenzo's arm. "The ward. There are people trapped in rooms. My priority is Matteo." Ava stepped directly in front of him. "Your priority is whatever he would order if he were awake." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. Ava did not back down. He would open every door. The chapel went quiet. Lorenzo looked at Matteo's unconscious body. Then he looked at the hidden corridor beyond the chapel. After a long moment he said, "Open them all." So they did. At 5:12 a.m., the lost people of Saint Aurelia began coming back into the world. Some walked out on their own. Some had to be carried. Some cried. Some said nothing. Some had forgotten their own names until nurses repeated them from files found in the archive. A senator's missing mistress. A union witness presumed dead. A teenage runaway whose wealthy father had paid to have her treated. An old judge's former clerk. A journalist. A woman who had vanished from a parking garage 5 years earlier. Every open door was a crime. Every face was a ruined life. Ava moved among them even with Matteo's blood drying on her arms. She checked pulses, removed restraints, turned off sedatives, told them, "You're safe now," even when her own voice shook. In the records room, Lorenzo's men found the archive. Rows and rows of files. Digital servers. Payment logs. Transfer documents. Death certificates. Photographs. Ava found the box marked Monroe, Liana. Eli stood beside her. Neither of them touched it at first. Then Ava opened the lid. Inside was their mother's hospital badge, a scarf, a pair of glasses, a file of copied ledgers, and a handwritten note folded into the back of a billing report. Ava unfolded it with shaking hands. "My babies?" If you ever read this, it means I failed to come home. I found something evil under Saint Aurelia. People with power are using this hospital to erase the people they fear. I tried to make copies. I tried to find someone honest. I do not know who to trust. Ava, take care of Eli, but do not forget yourself. Eli, listen to your sister. She is stronger than she knows. I love you both more than my life. Mom. Ava broke. Not quietly this time. She collapsed against the archive shelf, the note clutched to her chest, and sobbed with a grief that had waited 8 years for the truth. Eli wrapped his arms around her and cried too. Lorenzo stood at the doorway, silent. Even his men looked away. On the stretcher, Matteo opened his eyes for 1 second. He saw Ava on the floor with her mother's note. He heard the sound of her grief. And though he could barely breathe, though pain had hollowed out his body, he turned his head toward Lorenzo. Files, he rasped. Lorenzo rushed to his side. Boss, don't talk. Release them. To who? Matteo's eyes moved to Ava. Everyone. Lorenzo understood. Not Barry. Not bargain. Not leverage. Expose. He nodded. At 5:38 a.m., Lorenzo Bellandi sent the first files to a federal prosecutor Matteo had blackmailed years ago and trusted only because fear made him reliable. At 5:43, he sent the hospital camera footage to 3 news stations. At 5:49, the first hidden patients were carried through Saint Aurelia's ambulance bay in front of stunned police officers and reporters. At 5:52, Dr. Malcolm Harlan was brought up in handcuffs, screaming about authority, jurisdiction, and lawyers. At 5:59, the sun touched the edge of Chicago. By sunrise, someone had disappeared. But it was not Ava Monroe. It was not Ava. It was not even Matteo Bellandi, though death had tried very hard to take him. What disappeared was the lie. The polished image of Saint Aurelia Hospital. The untouchable reputation of its board. The careers of men who had bought silence for decades. The false death of Ava Monroe. The idea that powerful people could bury the truth forever. When Ava stepped out of the hospital at dawn, cameras turned toward her. She wore blood-stained scrubs. Her hair had fallen loose around her face. A cut marked her cheek. Her brother stood beside her, bruised but alive. In her hand she held her mother's note. Reporters shouted questions. Nurse Monroe, is it true there were missing patients under the hospital? Did hospital leadership know? Was your mother one of the victims? Ava froze. Eli squeezed her hand. Across the ambulance bay, Matteo was being loaded into a secure medical transport. He was barely conscious, oxygen mask over his face, but his eyes found hers. He gave one small nod. Not an order. Permission? Trust. Ava turned back to the cameras. My name is Ava Monroe, she said, voice hoarse but steady. My mother, Ava Monroe, was murdered inside this hospital because she discovered the truth. My brother was abducted last night because he found the evidence she died trying to protect. The reporters fell silent. Ava continued. Under Saint Aurelia Hospital, there is a hidden ward full of people who were erased. Some were declared dead. Some were transferred under fake names. Some were held for years because powerful men paid to make them disappear. Her hand tightened around Eli's. I am a nurse. I took an oath to protect life. So hear me clearly. Every patient down there gets their name back. Every family gets the truth. And everyone who helped bury them should be afraid. Lorenzo, standing beside the ambulance, murmured, She just threatened half of Chicago on live television. Matteo's eyes remained on Ava. Behind the oxygen mask, he smiled faintly. She warned them. Then his monitor screamed. Ava heard it before anyone else reacted. She turned. Matteo's body went still. The paramedic shouted, pressure dropping. Ava, run. Cameras followed her, but she no longer cared. She climbed into the ambulance and pressed 2 fingers to Matteo's neck. Weak pulse. Too weak. Hang blood now, she ordered. Pressure bag. He's bleeding internally. A paramedic said, We need to transport. He won't survive transport unless you stabilize him first. Lorenzo appeared at the ambulance doors. Can you keep him alive? Ava looked down at Matteo. At the man who had woken from unconsciousness because she cried. At the man who had stood between her and bullets. At the man born from a violent legacy, who had chosen, at the cost of his own blood, to expose it. Yes, she said. Then she looked at Lorenzo. But you need to drive like hell. The ambulance tore through Chicago at sunrise. Black SUVs surrounded it like moving walls. Sirens screamed through streets washed clean by rain. Eli sat on the bench beside Ava, refusing to let go of her sleeve. Lorenzo spoke into two phones at once, arranging surgeons, security, federal protection, and threats in the same calm voice. Ava worked over Matteo. She pressed gauze against his wound, adjusted oxygen, checked his pulse, watched his skin color, counted every breath like she could force him to keep taking another. At one point, Matteo's fingers closed weakly around her wrist. She looked down. His eyes opened barely. "Eli," he whispered. "He's alive. Your mother's file? With me." "The drive?" Ava hesitated. Eli said from the bench, still inside her. Matteo's eyes moved to Ava. Even half dead, he looked amused. "You swallowed the most dangerous evidence in Chicago." Ava pressed harder against the wound. "And you got shot 3 times in one night. Let's not compare decision-making." His thumb moved faintly against her wrist. "At 3 a.m., he whispered. "You were crying." Ava's throat tightened. "You were supposed to be unconscious. I heard you. Why?" His eyes held hers. "Some sounds matter." She looked away before the tears came again. "Then hear this. You do not get to disappear by sunrise. Not after all this. Not after making yourself part of my problem." His mouth curved. "Your problem needed better security." A laugh broke out of her, small and broken and real. Then his eyes closed again. "Matteo?" The monitor dipped. Ava leaned close, voice fierce. "Stay with me." He did. Barely. At 6:21 a.m., Matteo Bellandi disappeared into surgery. The operating room doors swallowed him, and Ava was forced to stop at the line where her badge no longer gave her authority. She stood in the hallway with Matteo's blood on her hands, Eli's head resting against her shoulder, and her mother's note folded inside her pocket. Lorenzo stood across from her like a guard dog in a tailored coat. For hours, no one told them enough. Surgeons came and went. Blood bags disappeared behind swinging doors. Federal agents arrived, then waited after Lorenzo looked at them once. Eli slept for 20 minutes, woke with a gasp, and apologized for crying. Ava told him if he apologized one more time, she would sedate him. By noon, the city was burning with truth. Saint Aurelia's board claimed ignorance. No one believed them. 3 police commanders were suspended. 2 judges resigned. A senator's name appeared in the leaked payment logs. Families began gathering outside the hospital with photographs of missing loved ones. Anton Greaves turned himself in and gave investigators every hidden code, every maintenance record, every name he remembered. Damon Vale survived long enough to ask for witness protection. Dr. Harlan said nothing after his lawyer arrived. By evening, Ava had given 2 statements, cried once in a bathroom, thrown up the evidence drive under medical supervision, and refused 3 separate requests to be admitted for observation. Finally, at 7:44 p.m., a surgeon came out. Ava stood so fast the chair hit the wall. The surgeon removed his cap. "He's alive." Ava gripped Eli's hand. Lorenzo closed his eyes. "He lost a great deal of blood," the surgeon continued. "The damage was serious, but we repaired what we could. He will need rest. No stress. No visitors beyond immediate approved personnel. Absolutely no threats, business conversations, or attempts to command my staff," Lorenzo said. "He will attempt all 3. I assumed." Ava stepped forward. "Can I see him?" The surgeon studied her face. "You need rest too." "I know." That was not agreement. 5 minutes, she said. The surgeon sighed. 5 minutes. Lorenzo started to follow. Ava stopped him with a look. "No." Lorenzo blinked. "I am family." "You are loud." Eli snorted softly despite everything. Lorenzo looked offended. Then, surprisingly, he stepped back. 5 minutes. Ava entered Matteo's room alone. He looked different under clean white light. Less like a myth. More like a man. His skin was pale. His chest was bandaged. Machines monitored every fragile rhythm of his survival. Without the gun, the blood, and the terrible calm of violence around him, Matteo Bellandi looked almost peaceful. Almost. His eyes opened before she reached the chair. "You are alive," she said. "So are you. You sound disappointed." "I am relieved." The honesty disarmed her. Ava sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside the window, Chicago glowed under evening rain. News helicopters circled in the distance. Somewhere beyond this room, the city was tearing open secrets men had built empires to hide. Inside, it was only them. Ava reached into her pocket and took out her mother's note. They found more files, she said. My mother copied names before she died. She hid enough that Eli knew where to look. Matteo watched her carefully. She was brave, he said. Ava swallowed. Yes. You are like her. Her eyes burned. Don't say that unless you mean it. I do. She looked down at the note. I spent 8 years thinking she just died. I was angry at everything. The hospital, the doctors, God, her sometimes. Because she left me with bills and Eli, and no instructions on how to become an adult overnight. Her voice cracked. But she didn't leave, she was taken. Matteo's hand moved slowly across the sheet. Not far. Just enough that his fingers touched hers. Ava looked at them. He did not grab, did not claim, did not pull. He simply offered contact and let her decide. After a moment, she turned her hand over. Their fingers linked. Matteo closed his eyes briefly. What happens now? He asked. Ava breathed in slowly. Now Eli and I bury our mother properly. The hidden patients get lawyers, doctors, names, families. Harlan goes to prison. The city pretends to be shocked while everyone guilty tries to save themselves. And you? I go back to work. His eyes opened. At Saint Aurelia? No. Never there. Good. I'll find another hospital. You should rest first. She gave him a look. Do not start giving medical advice from a hospital bed. I am practicing humility. You are terrible at it. His mouth curved faintly. The silence that followed was softer. Then Ava said, Your family name is in those files. I know. People will come for you. They already do. This is different. Yes. Are you afraid? Matteo looked at her. No. Ava studied him. Not even a little? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I am afraid of one thing. What? That you will decide I am only another shadow from the place that killed your mother. Ava's chest tightened. She looked at the man in the bed. The Mafia boss. The criminal. The wounded stranger who had heard her cry and answered. You are from that world, she said. Yes. But tonight you chose against it. His eyes stayed on hers. I will keep choosing against it. You cannot erase what your family did. No. You cannot fix my mother. No. You cannot buy forgiveness from me. I would not insult you by trying. Ava looked away, fighting the sudden pressure in her throat. You say dangerous things very calmly. I am recovering from blood loss. That is not an excuse. It is all I have. She laughed softly. This time, it did not break. Matteo heard it and went still. Ava noticed. What? He shook his head faintly. Nothing. No? What? His thumb brushed once over her knuckles. You told me to survive long enough to hear you laugh. Ava's breath caught. Outside, thunder rolled far away now, weaker than before. The storm was leaving. She stood slowly, but she did not pull her hand from his yet. I should check on Eli. Yes. You should sleep. Yes. You will actually sleep? No. Matteo. His eyes warmed slightly. I will try. She nodded and stepped toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back. He was watching her with the steady intensity of a man who had spent his life guarding power but had no idea what to do with tenderness. Ava touched the silver chain at her throat. The locket was broken now. The secret inside had been freed. But the chain remained. By sunrise, she said quietly, someone did disappear. Matteo understood. The lie. She nodded. And maybe the woman I was before tonight. His expression softened. Good. Ava tilted her head. Good? The woman you become next will terrify them. Ava smiled. Small. Exhausted. Real. Rest, Matteo. He held her gaze. Come back, Ava. It was not an order. Not a demand. A request. For a man like him, maybe the most vulnerable thing he knew how to say. Ava stood at the door for one more heartbeat. Then she answered. I heard you. And for the first time since 3 a.m., neither of them was alone in the dark.